Biology is complicated and unpredictable. We still cannot predict whether an individual will develop Parkinson's or diabetes or high blood pressure. Even for well-studied medicines, doctors still largely rely on a trial-and-error strategy to determine how effective it is or whether it will trigger a side effect in a patient. When I was an undergraduate, I didn't understand why everything is so unpredictable in biology. Look at the world around us. We can predict and control a lot of things with the advancement of math and physics. When buying a brand new car or installing a thermostat in your home, you know they are usually reliable. Just imagine what it would be like if you need to buy a car by trial and error. Look at the sky. Scientists now can precisely calculate how planets move in our solar system. Even the weather forecasts are getting more and more accurate. So in college, I thought people must have not tried hard enough to make biology more predictable. And I was going to be the one to try it. I started with studying protein because it's one of the basic components of life. Proteins are made of amino acids as its basic building block. And the sequence of amino acids determines its shape. And the shape of the protein in turn determines its function, and the protein function controls all aspects of life. My dream was to use math and physics knowledge to predict the function of every protein from its sequence. Then I could probably predict everything in biology using the function of this protein. That was a sweet dream. The reality, however, was that I couldn't even figure out the structure and function of one protein during my whole senior year. Later, I realized that predicting protein function from its amino acid sequence is the grand challenge of biology, and there's no way an undergraduate can single-handedly solve this question. I feel truly hopeless. How could we predict anything if we couldn't even predict the life's most basic components, the protein? So I asked myself, what makes biology so complicated and so hard to predict? You may have heard of arguments like there are just too many components in biology. Indeed, look at our human body. A human body has 30 trillion cells. Each cell has more than 20,000 genes. Only about 10% of the genes has been heavily studied by the scientists, and we know little or nothing about the rest of them. But today, let's imagine we are in a world that we know every single component in biology. We know every single gene in our cell. We know every single cell in our body. In this futuristic world, are we able to predict the progression of disease or the potency of a medicine? It turns out that knowing every component in biology is only halfway through total predictability. This is because biological systems have emergent behavior. Emergent behavior of a system depends not only on its components, but also interactions among these components. Think about Lego. To build a successful Lego masterpiece, you need not only all its Lego pieces, but also correct connection among these pieces. Same pile of Legos, connecting in different ways. It can be a Millennium Falcon, or Disney Castle, or just a pile of Lego. In biology, same set of genes connecting in different ways, a cell can behave quite differently. This is in contrast to something that does not have emergent behavior, such as a packed camping bag. Since the components in the bag don't interact with each other, each component actually can tell you a lot of things. For example, if you unpack a bag, a part will tell you the camper is going to cook something, and a book will tell you they are going to read. When you unpack a living cell, however, each individual gene tells you little about what the cell can or cannot do. Emergent behaviors are everywhere in biology. You may be wondering why I couldn't even figure out the function of single gene in college. This is because even a single protein molecule have emergent behaviors. I mentioned that Amino acids are the basic building block of protein. When a group of amino acids come together, they can interact in the three-dimensional space. And it's this interaction that determines the shape and the function of the protein. Amino acids are just like Lego pieces, and their interactions are like Lego connection that determines what the final product is like. Using this way, with only 20 kinds of amino acids as basic building block, nature builds protein with all kinds of functions, including converting sugar into energy, supporting cellular structure, facilitating communication among cells. But also precisely because of these emergent behaviors. Although many proteins only have a few hundred amino acids, the number of possible ways they can interact in the three-dimensional space is astronomical. We simply don't have enough computing power to pin down the exact way these amino acids choose to interact. This is the same feeling like you have all the Lego pieces in your hand, but you just don't know how nature connects them together to make these amazing protein masterpieces. Our immune system also has emergent behaviors. It consists of billions of immune cells. These individual immune cells, when isolated as single cells, can hardly survive and can do very little things. This is because they need to constantly talk to each other through a special signaling molecule in order to survive and properly function. When they work together as a system, powerful functions emerge. It protects us from pathogens and also surveys our body against cancer. But the extensive interaction among these immune cells also makes the immune system extremely hard to predict. For example, a common flu or the recent coronavirus usually won't kill people. But the immune system of a small percentage of I think you will be fine. But the immune system of a small percentage of patients become overactive and loses control. And the immune cells just blindly attack the normal tissue, which causes a large percentage of death by the common flu or coronavirus. We have little idea when and how our immune system loses control and becomes overactive, and doctors usually cannot prevent it or predict it beforehand. So emergent behaviors in biology is complicated and very hard to predict, but there's hope. Powerful mathematical tools have been developed to predict these emergent behaviors. In graduate school, I revisited my dream to predict everything in biology and decided to apply math to something manageable. I realized that I don't need to predict everything from the very bottom, from amino acids to proteins to the cells. Instead, I can begin by predicting how a system of interacting proteins affect the behavior of the living cell. This is just like to predict how a car moves. You don't need to dig into the finest detail from atoms to material to auto parts to the whole car. You just need to think about how different auto parts like engines, wheels, and gearbox interact to make the car run. With the help of mathematical tools, I'm able to predict the behavior of my protein system to a surprisingly high precision. Looking at these exciting results, I keep thinking, what will the world be like if we can predict everything in biology? We can finally give definite answer to questions like, will I develop diabetes when I'm 40? Or what's the best medicine for my uncle who can't stop shaking? Understanding these powerful and fascinating emergent behaviors also enables us to create novel biological systems with unimaginable capacities, such as cells that can consume pollutants, synthetic organs that can substitute dysfunctional ones, or the artificial immune system that can help us clear out cancer cells. Now I feel very hopeful that we could make biology more predictable. And not just me, a community of scientists right now are applying mathematical tools to make biology a more predictive science in the future.